Senator Sheldon Whitehouse put Pam Bondi on the spot with some of the toughest questions yet about her potential role as Attorney General. The senator wanted to know one thing above all. Would she act as an independent leader of the Department of Justice or as a political weapon for Donald Trump?
Senator.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Ms. Bondi.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for meeting with me. I greatly appreciate that.
It was a pleasure. Ms. Bondi, you were a courtroom prosecutor for a great many years. As a courtroom prosecutor, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
And you went on to be Florida's Attorney General. As Florida's Attorney General, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
As Florida's Attorney General, you were responsible for hiring into the Florida Department of Attorney General, correct?
Senator, the Attorney General's office in Florida is the third largest in the state, approximately 1,400 employees and approximately 400 lawyers. Only California and Texas are our bigger offices.
And you were responsible
yes.
for hiring into that office while you were Attorney General?
Yes.
Would you have hired someone into the Florida Attorney General's office who you knew had an enemies list?
Senator, to cut to the chase, you're clearly talking about Kash Patel. I don't believe he has an enemies list. He made a quote on TV, which I have not heard. I saw your sign, or Senator Durbin's sign, about Kash. But I know that Kash Patel has had 60 jury trials as a public defender, as a prosecutor. He has great experience in the Intel Department, Department of Defense. I have known Kash, and I believe that Kash is the right person at this time for this job. You'll have the ability to question Mr. Patel.
And I'm questioning you right now
do.
about whether you will enforce an enemies list that he announced publicly on television.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Thank you. The FBI's, what is the FBI's role in national security and counterterrorism, and how important is that role?
You know, Senator, I believe now more than ever, counterterrorism is so important and vital in our country. We are facing such incredible threats here and abroad. I'm sure many of you saw former FBI Director Wray's interview on 60 Minutes. He talked about the threats that, frankly, again, I don't have my security clearance, but the threats facing us, Senator, from China right now that are so great, the sleeper cells within our country.
Given that importance, is it responsible to call for shutting down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work? And will you, as Attorney General, impede or shut down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work?
Senator,
Two questions.
Senator, I believe that national security is vital right now for our country on so many fronts. I could continue to discuss many others.
And the FBI's role in that?
And the FBI plays a vital role in counterterrorism
which you
throughout
will
our
or will
world.
not shut down.
I will look at each agency. I have no intention of shutting anything down right now, Senator. I am not in that office yet, and if confirmed, I will look at each individual agency and how it should be managed, but counterterrorism right now in our world is vital.
You have said that Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted in the Trump administration. What Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted and why?
I said that on TV. I said prosecutors will be prosecuted, to finish the quote, if bad. Investigators will be investigated. You know, we all take an oath, Senator, to uphold the law. None of us are above the law. Let me give you a really good example of a bad lawyer within the Justice Department, a guy named Klein Smith, who altered a FISA warrant, one of the most important things we can do in this country. So will everyone be held to an equal, fair system of justice if I am the next Attorney General? Absolutely. And no one is above the law.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
I believe in the freedom of speech. only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty basic, Senator, with anything, with any victim. And this goes back to my entire career for 18 years as a prosecutor and then 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. You find the facts of the case, you apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I think the concern is that weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure. And we want to make sure that that's not the case, that you remain independent, that you remain able to and willing to tell the president no when that's necessary to protect the Constitution and the integrity of the department. So that's where I'm asking these questions. We talked in the meeting about the contacts policy that has prevailed really since Senator Hatch sat in that chair and demanded it of the Clinton Justice Department through all the administration since then, with the exception of a brief period under Attorney General Gonzalez, which he corrected and which did not end well for him. There has been a contacts policy that limits contacts between the White House and the Department of Justice to a very few senior officials on each side. In your role as Attorney General, if you are confirmed, will you maintain, defend, and enforce that longstanding contacts policy?
Senator, yes, I will meet with White House counsel and I will meet with the appropriate officials and follow the contacts policy.
My time has expired. Thank you, Ms. Bondi.
Senator Cornyn.
The exchange began with White House asking whether Bondi, during her years as a courtroom prosecutor or as Florida's Attorney General, had ever kept an enemies list. She said no. But the real concern came when White House pressed her on whether she would enforce such a list under Trump ally Kash Patel, who has publicly hinted at one. Instead of giving a direct answer, Bondi dodged by praising Patel's experience and insisting he was qualified. For many, this is troubling, because the very concept of an enemies list echoes the Nixon era, when political opponents were targeted and government power was abused. White House then shifted to national security and asked about the FBI's counterterrorism role. Bondi acknowledged the seriousness of threats facing the United States, especially from foreign actors like China, and she called counterterrorism vital. Yet she stopped short of giving a clear commitment to protect the FBI's mission, saying only that she would look at each agency if confirmed. That kind of ambiguity raises red flags, because counterterrorism is not a negotiable issue. It is a core duty of the FBI, and leaving room for political decisions in that space could have real consequences for national security. The senator also confronted her about a past statement in which she said prosecutors will be prosecuted. Bondi defended the comment, pointing to an FBI lawyer who altered a FISA warrant as an example of misconduct that deserved punishment. While it is true that accountability is necessary, her framing sounded more like a campaign slogan than a commitment to justice. The fear here is that such rhetoric could be used to justify retribution against prosecutors who investigated Donald Trump, rather than a neutral application of the law. White House pressed further on freedom of the press, asking under what circumstances she would prosecute journalists for what they write. Bondi answered that she supports free speech and would only bring charges if a crime was committed. On the surface, that sounded reassuring, but it left open the question of how crime might be defined under a politicized Department of Justice. Critics worry that leaks, whistleblowing, or investigative reporting could be reframed as criminal activity in the wrong hands. Throughout the exchange, Bondi repeatedly argued that Trump has been the victim of DOJ weaponization since 2016, promising that she would not politicize the office if confirmed. But this very framing undermines her claim of neutrality. By casting Trump as the target of unfair investigations, she positioned herself as sympathetic to his narrative, which only deepened concerns that she would act as his defender rather than as an independent attorney general. Finally, Whitehouse asked if she would uphold the long-standing contacts policy, which restricts communication between the White House and DOJ to only a handful of senior officials. Bondi said she would respect it, a commitment that sounded good on paper, but will ultimately be judged by her actions, not her words. History has shown that such policies are only as strong as the leaders who enforce them. In the end, this exchange laid bare the central question of Pam Bondi's nomination. On the enemies list, she dodged. On the FBI's counterterrorism mission, she hedged. On the idea of prosecuting prosecutors, she leaned into a message of retribution. On the First Amendment, she gave cautious assurances but left ambiguity. And on the contacts policy, she promised compliance but offered no guarantee she would resist pressure from the Oval Office. Senator Whitehouse's warning still lingers. The job of Attorney General requires someone willing to say no to the president, to stand firm when the Constitution and the rule of law are on the line. The real question now is whether Pam Bondi is that person or whether her answers today revealed the opposite. What do you think? Did Bondi reassure you that she'd act independently? Or did her evasions raise more red flags? Let us know in the comments.